I want to welcome everybody to the bi-monthly Friday afternoon interactive webinar here on Sex and Healing Relationship. I'm Debbie McRae and I'm a licensed therapist. I have a private practice in Arizona and I'm a certified sex addiction therapist and a licensed professional counselor. My specialties are working with betrayed partners, with porn and sex addicts, as well as helping couples heal from the effects of both of those. I encourage you to ask questions, even though it may not be on today's topic. And again, like I always do, I bring to our webinar what shows up in my office. And this past week, I had several comments that led me to this topic today, which is going to be trust building after betrayal. And it's actually going to end up being a two-part series. There was so much data that I collected that today we're really going to talk about tangible things that you can look at and be aware of to see if trust is being built. And then the next time we meet, we're going to talk about 10, 15 steps. I haven't decided how many we're going to do yet, but specific things you can do, actions you can take to rebuild trust. So here's some of the comments that I heard in my office this week. One client said to me, my husband keeps asking me how much time it's going to take for me to trust him again. And so I asked them, well, how long has it been? And it had been 6 months. And I said, well, all the data shows that it's going to take anywhere from 18 months to 3 years to really get to that place where you finally feel secure and more trusting of your partner who's recovering from their addiction. Another client said, this has been going on for so long, repeated slips again and again and again. I don't see how I could ever rebuild trust with him. And then another one said, my partner's doing everything right. I mean, they're not doing anything wrong in all their recovery. Everything I've asked them to do, they're doing everything for themselves, but I just can't trust him. Is there something wrong with me? And this particular person had been dealing with this for about a year. So trust is an interesting thing. We know that trust is such an essential component to having a strong relationship. But when we have that discovery disclosure of a sex or porn addiction, the attachment between partners are immediately disrupted and damaged. The trust is broken and it is so hard to rebuild in that moment and during those early days and over time even. So sometimes we really focus on rebuilding trust as, okay, my trust was broken because of discovery disclosure. What we don't often talk about is, okay, after discovery and disclosure, while we're trying to do the repair, right? What gets in the way of rebuilding trust? Yes, we have to repair the damage that's been done, but trust is even more than that. So sometimes we also see that not only has the addict partner broken trust in a huge way, but in some smaller ways, the betrayed partner during the healing and recovery practice or journey rather, might be also kind of not as trustworthy as they would like to be. So we're going to talk a little bit about there's a struggle for both to rebuild trust. And we're going to talk about some trust breakers. So let me give you some examples of trust breakers. And I see this come up all the time. A big one is going back on your word or breaking promises. So you say you're going to be home at 5:30 and you don't come home at 5:30. It could be as simple as you say you're going to take out the trash. That one comes up a lot and you don't take out the trash. Or it might be that you're going to take a time out when you get a little more heated and you're starting to get more emotional and you don't do it. Another one is not being there for your partner in a time of need. Now, it's hard at times when I'm in the early days of recovery or I am just starting my recovery from my addiction. It is hard to show up for each other in times of need. This is one of those higher, what I call higher level skill sets. But part of that trust building is going to be that we show up for each other. Another trust breaker is withholding or keeping something back. So this shows up as I'm only telling part of the story. I'm only giving you some of the information, not all of the information. This shows up as, I didn't want to tell you all of it because I didn't think you could handle all of it. So I told you what I thought you could handle. Well, it doesn't go well once the full truth comes out. So withholding information, not telling the full story is not being truthful. Another one that is a trust breaker is lying or manipulation. So sometimes we just out and out lie. Now, this could be even as simple as a white lie. Let's say your addict partner can see you're struggling as a betrayed partner, and they come to you and say, "It looks like you're struggling. Are you okay?" And you go, "Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm doing good." And that is not telling the truth. So we have to share, right now I am struggling. I don't know why. I'm trying to figure that out. I need some space, some time. I'm going to go do some self-care. That's the more honest reply. Another thing that's a trust breaker is a pattern of not sharing your feelings openly. And we can learn to have a really great set of communication skills to be able to share feelings so the other person can hear them. And that's really important. Now, we know that the reason that addicts have their addictions is because they don't know how to process, handle, understand, feel a lot of things around their feelings and their emotions because they've gone into the addiction to help manage all of that and some of that. And so feelings is something, again, that we need to work on. And we're going to talk today about what we have to do when somebody does share feelings with us. And then the last one is there's behavior patterns of reacting to the other person. So reacting is a very limbic fight, flight, freeze response. It's usually a fight response. I do it automatically. I usually have a lot of emotion behind it or no emotion behind it, or I disconnect completely. So rather than responding, where we kind of take a moment, slow it down, make sure we're connected to prefrontal cortex, I'm more grounded, and then I can choose how I'm going to respond to you. So the question I hear often is, how can I know if I can trust my addict partner or even trust my betrayed partner? So the signs of trust in a relationship are different for everybody. I could ask each client that comes in, what does trust look like for you? And it's going to be different. So it's really important that one of the things you do as a betrayed partner, even as an addict partner, is to sit down and make a list of needs. What are my trust needs? I'm really big on needs, working with my clients on that. And so we have to go a little bit deeper other than I just need to trust you. We have to start asking things like, what would trust look like if my partner were to be trustworthy? If I could trust my partner, what would I see happening? What would I be experiencing? And another great question is, how do I go about expressing or communicating these needs? The more specific you are, the better chance of having those needs met will be. It's just imperative. We cannot expect our partners to be mind readers and know what our needs are as far as trust goes, because it's kind of like, if I don't know what my partner needs for trust and to feel, that they can be that I'm trustworthy, then it's like I'm a moving target, right? I'm shooting at a moving target and I don't know what it is I'm trying to do. So there are some key components that have to be part of a relationship where there's been betrayal and we're trying to rebuild trust. We have to see, as part of this trust process, that both partners feel and act committed to the relationship and to each other. Very, very important. Another key component is that both partners need to feel safe with each other. They need to know that each person will honor any boundaries that are put in place, especially the physical, the emotional, the sexual boundaries. Each partner needs to listen when the other is communicating their needs and feelings. And that, again, is a skill set. Another key component is each partner works on gaining, demonstrating, and using empathy with each other. Again, that comes further on down the process. Both partners need to get to a place where they don't feel like they have to hide anything from each other. they can actually both be very vulnerable together. And there's mutual respect between both parties in the partnership. So oftentimes I see clients come in to see me or in group, and they're trying to rebuild trust. They need to see that their partner is trustworthy. And it's really interesting because it's kind of interesting in the early stages of recovery, healing recovery for the betrayed partner, what they need for trust is very interesting. I see clients that struggle with wanting their addict partner to tell them every single thing that crosses their mind. So every time you might see a woman and notice her, or you might think about something you saw in the past, or every little detail that crosses and comes into the addict partner's mind. Unfortunately, that's not always the healthiest way to go about rebuilding trust, because the bottom line is each of us have to have our own personal thoughts. It's what we do with our thoughts, right? As we are in recovery and we're working on, if I've got unhealthy thoughts that come in and I'm a struggling addict who happens to, have a certain, you know, pattern to my addiction, right? And maybe thoughts are along with it. Then when those thoughts come in, I use a 3-second rule. So I only focus on it for 3 seconds. Then I do a healthy distraction. I reach out for help. I go do self-care. Then we can just trust that your partner is managing it and handling that as part of their recovery. Trust doesn't always mean giving each other access to every part of your lives. And I understand that there needs to be a very balanced way of sharing things like computers and cell phones and social media accounts and components. Work-related information is one of those that you may not be able to get onto a work computer that your partner uses, and so we have to look at things. We can't just rebuild trust by tracking on an ongoing basis our partner's movement in their vehicle, or having cameras watching your partner when they're at home or at work, because this are like actions that we're expecting the person to take, right? Or I'm going to do. There's so much control in that. Rather, I want you to consider that rebuilding trust is a way of relating to each other and connecting to each other. Makes it very, very different. This is not about controlling or preventing. It's about how I relate to you and how we create healthier connection. So trust building behaviors are what we're going to talk about, and they do take time. It's important that if I'm rebuilding trust as an addict partner, especially, that I am patient, I'm dependable, and I'm consistent. Because I say oftentimes it is consistent, healthy recovery work over time is what is the foundation for rebuilding trust. So like I mentioned earlier, betrayed partner could take 18 months to 3 years before they feel like they can trust. So that has to be a consistent, ongoing behavior set that the addict partner has. It's also important to identify, like I said earlier, what are the specific trust building behaviors I need to see my partner doing? What do I need to experience? So the big question is, how can I know that my addict partner is doing the trust building behaviors that you're talking about, Debbie? How do I know that what they're doing is going to repair our relationship or help repair the relationship? Another question is, what are some specific things I would see my addict partner or my betrayed partner doing that indicates that I can trust them and be vulnerable? Or are there signs that I can look for? So oftentimes I do psychoeducation with my clients around Brene Brown and her research on what makes someone trustworthy. It is such a great acronym. Her Braving acronym is a way to take trust and break it down into tangible parts. This is what I'm calling the trust building behaviors. So we have to be able to ask for what we need specifically in order to build better trust, or better build trust is a better way to say it. Okay. All of these factors also apply to self-trust. I have to learn to trust myself. So I can literally take the things we're going to talk about, and I can apply them to really learning to trust myself as well. Because the bottom line is, in order for me to trust other people, I have to learn to trust myself as well. So there's 7 factors, like I mentioned, and her acronym BRAVING stands for boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. So I want to talk on each of those a little bit, and I want to apply it to what I see coming in and some of the struggles that occur. So the first thing we're going to talk about is boundaries. You know, boundaries are crucial. I believe that they are number one in really establishing the ability to create trust. The lack of proper boundaries is what ruined the trust in the first place. So there is no trust without boundaries. So if you don't understand boundaries, you don't have boundaries. If you can't tell me what your boundaries are, or your therapist what your boundaries are, then I encourage you to work on that. I love what Brene Brown said. She says, I trust you if you are clear about your boundaries and you hold them, and you're clear about my boundaries and you respect them. So boundaries really keep the bad stuff out and the good stuff in. Boundaries are about safety. I'm passionate about boundaries because boundaries are what helps us heal. They are so fundamental. So not only do we need to have clear boundaries around the behaviors we'll accept or we will do, those are our internal boundaries. So my internal boundaries are those behaviors and things I do, right? The standards I have, the values I've put into place so that other people are safe from me. And then the external boundaries are the behaviors that, you know, I will accept from others so that I'm safe from them. And if I can look at it that way, it's a really great kind of an indicator of if my boundary is a healthy boundary, if I need to redo my boundary. So what would a healthy boundary look like? With a betrayed partner, a good internal boundary might be that when I am triggered and I know I'm limbic, that I don't use shaming language towards my partner. I don't bring up maybe past incidences that are painful. For the addict partner, an internal boundary might be that I'm going to go see my therapist every 2 weeks. And my partner doesn't have to remind me or tell me that that's what I need to be doing. I do it on my own because I've put that boundary in place for me. Now, a good external boundary for a betrayed partner might be that, you know what, if I don't see you, my addict partner, going to therapy on a consistent basis, you're no longer safe. So as a result, I may not be as connected to you. At times, I may have to kind of pull away from the relationship a little bit, meaning I may have to sleep in another room. I may need to step away and go to self-care. I may not be able to talk about certain things because it's too difficult. It doesn't feel safe. But we have to verbalize that. We don't just do it. A boundary has to be verbalized. I talked with somebody this week about that. They talked about a boundary they set. And my question was, well, as you did that, did you let the person know that's what you were doing? And they went, no, I didn't. And I said, well, then how did they know that was a boundary? So words have to go with boundaries as well. A good external boundary for a addict partner might be that I no longer associate with other people that were part of my addiction, right? It could be my buddy that I used to go to the bar with, right? And that led to some of my acting out or, you know, consumption of alcohol if I'm an alcoholic. So that is something that I know that partner is not safe for me, so I don't let them into my world, right? And then my internal boundary is I'm going to honor that, so I'm not going to reach out to that person. Okay. The second element of trust is reliability. This is consistency. So reliability means doing what you say you're going to do, not once, but every time. You do what you say you're going to do over and over and over again. You cannot gain and earn trust if you're reliable only one time. This has to be on repeat. The consistency, that is what I see betrayed partners are looking for. Consistently going to recovery, consistently reaching out to your sponsor or your group members, consistently doing your recovery work, whether it's reading a book or doing your 12 steps. One of the most frustrating things I see a betrayed partner experience is the inconsistency in recovery of their addict partner. So I cannot tell you how much this consistency, this reliability is such an important element. So you've got to be careful. If I'm going to be reliable, I have to make sure that I clearly communicate my limitations. I don't overpromise. So I've got to be very honest with myself and with my partner what it is I'm able to do, because you're going to do what you say you're going to do. That's all it is. And believe me, a betrayed partner is going to remember. So it's very, very important that you follow through with what you say you're going to do, and you do it over and over and over again. Show your partner that you have their back by, once I say I'm going to do something, then I do it. I'm consistent. So you want to make commitments that'll put your relationship back on track. And believe it or not, it's the little things during daily life, the consistency that makes a big difference. So if I see my addict partner doing self-care consistently, if I see them doing recovery work consistently, if I consistently see them working on having good boundaries or not having maybe anger that they've had in the past, gosh, I want to move towards them. They feel safer. And even with betrayed partners, if I consistently see my betrayed partner doing self-care and seeing their therapist, then I know they're going to be in a better place and I'm going to want to move closer to them. So that kind of circles back around to what I said earlier about this trust building really is about connection, and it's about a process rather than just certain actions. Okay, element of trust number 3 is accountability. So you own your mistakes, you apologize, and you make amends. So if that's a struggle, then you have to figure out how to have the ability to own up to your mistakes, to apologize for them, to take accountability, to do the repair. So the other thing that we have to also see is that if I make mistakes, you allow me to apologize, own it, and make amends. So it's a two-way street. You know, when there's been broken trust and deception and infidelity, it's so important that the addict partner take full responsibility for the choices that they made. So that's why we talk so often about a formal therapeutic disclosure. That's part of the accountability process. And there's different layers to that as well. But once the secret's out, once we know about it, right, that's the moment you start taking the accountability for it. It's not a time to divert, deflect, or place the blame on the other partner, because that's not going to rebuild the trust. So it's important that you focus on your own behaviors of taking accountability rather than finger pointing to your partner in an attempt to justify the bad choices that you've made. And again, this can go both ways, but I really show this up. This really shows up with the addict partner. It's important to come clean. It's important just to put every card on the table and to express genuine remorse and to ask what it is that needs to be done to make amends. So both partners within their healing and recovery journey have to take ownership of their part and the necessary steps towards healing. That's very, very, very important. So the next one is the vault. Okay, you don't share information or experiences that are not yours to share. Our stories are not meant for everyone. And so the addict partner, the betrayed partner need to know when confidences should be kept. So we have to be very careful on this because we know that addiction thrives in secrecy. And we need to share with other people what we're going through. But it's got to be a process where when I am mad at my partner, I don't just go out there and start sharing everything with everybody about what they've done. I've seen this happen where partners who are extremely hurt by their addict partner's betrayal will oftentimes tell children about what's going on, and that's very damaging. I've seen couples that come in, and when there's been tension between them, one of the partners will turn to their parents and tell their parents about what's going on and rag and dump about the other partner. Well, that affects the relationship now that the other partner has with their in-laws. So we have to be very, very careful, because when I share vulnerable things from you, I've got to look at it like it's a privilege. And I've got to ask myself, is this something that I really should be sharing with other people? And the answer, I'm going to tell you, 99.9% of the time is going to be no. And you never share it without permission. That's why I like couples working together and determining together who we're going to share our story with. And we don't have to share the complete story with everybody. Sometimes we just share generalities, and sometimes for those that are vulnerable, those that are trustworthy, that have earned the right to our vulnerability, we can share more with. So it's like when somebody shares something with me, I put it in a vault and I keep it with me. It's not only that I hold confidences, but I see you holding confidences. So it shows up like this in recovery. It is the addict partner who comes home and shares specific details of stories regarding the other men in the group and about their partners. You got to be careful. Even as a betrayed partner, when I go into, let's say, a group setting, I'm very, very careful and cautious in a group, having the women just start ragging and telling all these story after story after story about their partner, right? Rather than making it about, here's my experience, right? And here's what I'm dealing with. Let's work on recovering and dealing with that. Because I love what Brene Brown says is, when I start to share information about others that is not my right to share, I create with the other person something called common enemy intimacy, which is kind of like she says, it's kind of short circuiting or short wiring connection, because we're not connecting on a real deep level. We're connecting because we're talking about somebody else, a third party. So we don't want to do that. It's so important that we have this vault within the relationship that we're trying to repair, because it is so necessary for vulnerability. So we've got to learn to share with people who are worthy of our vulnerability and trust in ourselves. So that's very, very important. Element number 5 is integrity. Seems like a vague term, but it's so simple. Brene Brown has 3 parts to how she defines integrity. It's choosing courage over comfort. It's choosing what's right over what's fun, fast, or easy. And it's practicing your values, not just professing your values. So I can't just say, this is what I believe. I have to also do it. There's got to be congruency, and there's got to be alignment. And I know that betrayed partners come in oftentimes and have a real struggle with seeing their partners say one thing and they do something else. And I'm sure it's the same way for some of the addict partners out there too. So the integrity is very, very important. The next element is non-judgment. So this one's really interesting. There is a lot of judgment going on, right? Our brain's trying to keep us safe. That's one way our brain does it, right? I take data, I come to a conclusion, it ends up being a judgment. In this case, I want you to think about judgment as being not judging the other person when they're struggling and need help, or judging myself because I'm struggling and I need help. We need to be able to ask for help. In a trusting relationship, it's so important. So if I come to my betrayed partner and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this, right? I wanted to let you know, I just really need you to have patience with me. And the addict partner comes back with, yeah, but you know what? You wouldn't be struggling with this if you were seeing your therapist more often than once a month. And if you were working your books, because I've seen your books laying around for months now, and it's not been open. So that's what I'm talking about. Rather than going to the, oh, tell me more about the struggle. We want to get curious. So it's so important that rather than judging, that we turn around and we get curious, maybe with what they need help with and why they need help. Curiosity is such a great tool to put in your tool belt. So when there's non-judgment, I can ask for what I need and you can ask for what you need. And we can talk about how we feel without judgment. So that is a very important element. The last element is generosity. So number 7 is generosity. Both the betrayed partner and the addict partner are going to make mistakes. It's just part of the recovery and healing journey. So when this happens, generosity has to come into play. So when the addict partner or the betrayed partner messes up, we have to stop and make a generous assumption and check it out, first of all. Rather than coming into judgment and coming to a conclusion, rather than blowing up or getting upset, like I just mentioned earlier, we've got to get curious. We need to share what's on our mind. This is where we check in with the other person about our stories in our head. We don't just assume. So it might be, hey, this is on my mind. Here's the story I'm in. I know you care about me. I know you don't mean to hurt my feelings. Help me understand. What a great way to approach somebody, because I'm assuming you're not meaning to hurt me, and I'm not coming to a judgment right away. That's the generous assumption. So it might be you see your partner wake up and you can tell they're disconnected. They don't appear to be very happy because they're not talking. Maybe they're giving you short responses, and your judgment tells you want to go to, oh, they're mad, they're grouchy, I don't want to be around them. And maybe you check in instead and say, hey, I'm curious. I noticed that you're quiet. You're not talking much. You know, I'm just wondering, are you having a bad day? Are you okay with me? And if they say, I'm fine, I'm okay with you, then my attitude is, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to assume that you're telling me the truth. I'm going to give you the generous assumption. So people make mistakes. Be generous in them making the mistakes. So we have to have generous interpretations about the intentions and actions of others. That's really hard when our hearts are hurting, when we're struggling in recovery. So we have to listen with an open heart to not only the partner's perspective, we've got to validate the partner's emotional experience, and we have to do that for the addict partner as well. So if we can look for these 7 elements, it's tangible. I can see if my addict partner has good boundaries or not. I can see if they're reliable, if they're being accountable and taking accountability, if they're working with me on sharing the information that we share and we're vulnerable with. We know who we're sharing it with, and we've got an agreement there. We've got that confidentiality. I can see that they're aligned with their values and have integrity. I can see that they're staying out of judgment of me and of themselves. And I can see that they're being generous with me when I make mistakes. That lets me know my partner is becoming more and more trustworthy, and I can begin to start trusting them. Trust is built in really small, and sometimes it seems like insignificant amounts. It does feel like it's slow. But it's really important that we have something to look for. We can look for the data. This helps me look for the data to know if you're safe. This is not only applicable to when I'm in a relationship with an addict partner, but it's all across the board. It's with friends, it's with family members and colleagues. These are just the indicators that let us know that I can trust you. So like I mentioned at the beginning of today, next time we meet, we're going to talk about some of the specific trust building steps that you can take to rebuild trust. So I don't know if there's going to be 10 or if there's going to be 15. You're going to have to come back and find out. I have a lot of data, but these are going to be the practical steps, the things that we can do, what we can focus on as we're rebuilding trust. So that's today's webinar.
It's so great. I love that you talked about boundaries as keeping the bad stuff out and the good stuff in. And your counterpart Matt on a Friday a few weeks ago talked about the best relationships have the healthiest boundaries. And at first I was kind of like, but I was like, no, because you're right. Just like you said, I know what you are looking for. You've used your words, and I can honor those and respect those, and I can tell you what mine are. And like there is transparency, but there's also it's not the guessing game. One of the things you talked about was I've got so many things underlined again, but you talked about oh fudge, I can't remember now, but I'm going to skip, but the non-judgmental, I thought it's Troy Love talks about being judgmental of ourselves, those voices of shame. And I think it's easy for both sides of the equation to fall into that judgment, even of ourselves. And so, even when you're talking about being generous, it's like at some point we have to, we're all going to make mistakes. And so at some point, we have to own it, the accountability, but be generous with ourselves too, of like, okay, I'm going to learn from this. I do like the story I'm telling myself. I use that a lot. The story I'm telling myself is this. I really use, I'm curious, because I learn a lot more if I'm curious than if
Mm,
I just pounce, and I do like to pounce. If I
mhm.
pounce in on a situation, that can, then it just, then somebody's defensive. I'm not learning anything, and I'm emoting, but I'm not learning. And so being curious really helps. So we have a bunch of questions, and um, I like to talk about trust building for ourselves, trusting ourselves too. And you mentioned these are higher order things. This is not something that's going to happen like, in the first few months of,
Mhm.
discovery and things. So this is like a vision for how this is the path, and, a vision for how we learn to move forward, and giving you goals and signs and actions and things like that. But to expect that I've just had discovery and now I'm going to magically know how to do all these things is not accurate. So, okay, if I think of my other, because there was another one too, but I'll think about it. Okay, so the first question is betrayed partner 3 years on this journey, partner sober in good recovery, and we are 1 year out from formal therapeutic disclosure. We have both done a lot of individual work and couple work post disclosure. Can you speak to the role of group couples work can play?
Um, Here's what I can share on that. I have never, I'm gonna, full transparency, I have never run a couples group. However, I do have a colleague that does, Matt Wheeler, and like we talked about, he does the second and fourth week. And as he and I have talked about it, and I have clients who actually attend the group, here's what I find. I find that there's a commonality amongst couples. They're all dealing with similar things. And he comes from an emotionally focused therapy approach, and that's how I've been trained as well. So, we're looking for, what are the negative cycle I'm in, and how do I get out of it by identifying my needs and getting my partner to understand my needs. So, what I love about the group approach is now I've got not only a therapist there, but I've got other people there that are bringing into the group their situations. And they're going to be similar to situations we've dealt with in the past, right? It may be even a situation we deal with in the future. And I know with Matt, he kind of puts them front and center and works through and processes with the couple, the issue that they have, and really helping each other understand where your partner's coming from. Right. So we're working on empathy building. We're working on, in real time with a real life problem. I'm trying to understand where my partner's coming from and get to that place of, oh, I understand you're feeling this way. Oh, here's why. And then understanding the need. What does the need look like? What would I be doing? And so you can refine and get very clear on here's the new behavior. Here's what we're going to do together as a couple to create connection. And then you also have other couples that are there and they're giving input, they're sharing. So they're doing all sorts of different group processes, like
Mhm.
they're doing doubling, which is kind of an exercise you do where if I don't know how I'm feeling, other people come up in group and they assist. And so there's a process you do where they come up and touch you on the shoulder with permission and say what they think you might be feeling. And you, the participant who's trying to figure out what am I feeling, will go, yeah, it's that, or no, it's not quite that. And so, you've got help from the group to kind of get to what I'm experiencing internally, right? Then I'm sharing with my partner externally, here's what's going on for me. They're validating it. I'm getting to the real feeling, right? Not just the surface feeling of frustration, anger, overwhelm, right? But the hurt, right? The sadness. And then we're talking about, well, how do we do the repair? How do we identify the need? So it has been very successful for Matt. I think it is really great work for couples to do. I'm not sure where you're from. If you're in Arizona, I would reach out to Matt Wheeler. and see him because it's a great, great thing to do. There are also other groups you can attend. Some in your area you might find emotionally focused therapy, hold me tight groups. You might consider doing a hold me tight group because there might be something that you gain from that because they take you through some different things as well. But I do believe that couples work can take what we're doing in session and kind of broaden it because I'm working with other people. I'm interacting with other people. I'm learning from them as well. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, and I think so too. Recovering Couples Anonymous is a 12-step group, and those are not unfortunately not everywhere, but if you can find a good group, because then it's the coupleship, and it's really hard, to go to a 12-step meeting and minimize something about your behavior or put it on your partner if your partner is sitting right there. So it can really help the accountability. But I do love that I can, we hadn't thought of that, or wow, you've navigated that, and that's been a struggle for us. So I think group work is very powerful too. We used to have a couples healing from betrayal work group, but unfortunately, we just people were not apparently ready for that aspect. But it was really good. I would be willing to offer it again if we had enough, people sign up. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of the right stuff, and so, if this feels like the next right step for the two of you, or talk to your therapist about it too, that it seems like that could be a really good thing for you. What if after I'm sorry. What if after betrayal, I don't even know what trustworthy behavior looks like? I did trust in the past before D-Day 16 years, and I was obviously wrong. After being wrong for so long, it's hard to know if he is really being trustworthy or masking. I don't know if his behaviors are real or acting. Oh, that's so challenging.
Really challenging. So as I've looked at that question, I've had a couple of thoughts come to mind. First of all, I think you can take what we talked about today and apply the braving. So I would probably take one thing at a time and kind of look at it. So I'm going to collect data. I'm going
Mm-hmm,
to step into what I call being that compassionate observer stance.
mm-hmm,
So that means I'm stepping out of judgment of my partner and even of me. And so I'm really just kind of looking at the data. So let's say I'm going to look at boundaries and just start noticing. And I'm just observing. That's all I'm doing. I'm not going to judge it right, wrong, good, bad, right? The only thing I am going to do is if those lack of boundaries are affecting me, I need to make sure I create safety for me. So I want you to know that that's part of it as well. Or I might look at reliability and I might start to just notice if there's a pattern. That's what I like to do. Is there a pattern of, inconsistency in showing up or, doing what you say you're going to do. Because all those little things, I think unaware, you're seeing this, and that's why you don't feel like, I don't know if I can trust him or not. So now you've got some specific things that you can look at and work on and notice. I think that's part of it. I think another aspect of it is, okay, I've got to understand what my needs are too. What are my trust needs? And it goes back to what I said earlier. I've got to be clear in, okay, what does trust look like me? Because I'll ask my partners, the betrayed partners, okay, we want to rebuild trust. So what does trust look like? What would you be experiencing? What would you see happening? And they go, well, I'd see them being honest. And I'd say, okay, be really specific. I'd see them being honest in how, right? We go through all of that. Okay, what else would be trustworthy? Believe it or not, I did have somebody say they take the garbage out when they say they're going to take the garbage out. I wouldn't sit there for 2 days. And I know that sounds silly, but that was part of it. And so the clearer you can get on, here's what trust would be, here's what would help me know I can trust you, right? And notice how I worded that. I didn't say this is what is going to make you trustworthy. It was here's how I'm going to know, I'm going to feel like I can trust you. And so I'm asking you to do this so I can connect with you. I can move towards you. I find that if you approach a partner where you're struggling with whatever they're doing, if we make it more about connection and creating safety, we make it more about attachment, that it becomes a win-win for both. So maybe in this case, you start to look for the data and noticing, oh, there's some boundaries that aren't really good. No wonder I can't trust. Then I want you to step in and go, okay, what are my boundary needs? What kind of boundaries would I see in place see my partner doing or having? You know, would it be having a boundary around doing the recovery work? Would it be a boundary around how he talks or she talks to you? Would it be a boundary around, you know, how they manage their emotions? So look at that, check in with your need, and then you're going to have to learn how to communicate it with your partner so that they can hear you and understand. So either it's not like a moving target, like I said. Now, there's another element here that I oftentimes teach my clients, and that is you might see him doing everything because you said, how do I know if he's really being trustworthy or if he's masking? In that case, I really work with my betrayed partners on learning how to trust their intuition again and really getting clear on um, if my gut, right, or my mind, or however you know, interpret your intuition, is telling me that there's incongruency here and it's not trustworthy, right, then I've got to honor that. Most oftentimes you can back it up with things that you're seeing or hearing, and there's usually data, but sometimes there's not. So let's say that's the case. What do you do with that? Well, you say to your partner, you know, I really want to trust you. However, my intuition tells me that you're not being completely truthful right now. And in this moment, I'm going to trust my intuition. And then you go create safety for yourself. You go do self-care. You put a boundary in place. Maybe it's like, I'm not going to I'm not going to continue with this conversation. You know, I don't believe it's going to help us create connection in this at this moment. And then you step away. So I think look at the data, approach, you know, with some good communication, what you specifically need in order to see that that person's trustworthy, and follow your intuition.
Yeah, and I was thinking, like, we say trust your gut. You know, like like my stomach will clench, and like I have a physical, you know, like there'll be a tightening in my chest. People have it in different places in their body. I think it's so easy to skip over that, you know, and just, you know, be blinded by the manipulation or whatever, you know. So I think doing the body awareness of, you know, what's really going on for me and what does
Mhm.
that mean, talking to a qualified professional, you know, all of those things. But like when we say trust your gut, I mean, to me that is, you know, like all of this stuff, you know, I get lots of people that are love bombed, you know, because like, you know, you know, oh, after, oh, it's all good, and I'm, you know, and look at, you know, all of the, and I love you so much and all that kind of stuff, and but their gut is churning, you know, and I'm like, yeah, that's the thing to trust, because all of this other stuff is, you know, is the illusion. So you know, and I'm just typing in, you know, we have drop-in groups, and this will be part for the next group too, or two, but the my earbud pods are running in and out, so sorry, just got a flippy message. But anyway, but you know, like this is the kind of stuff, like, you know, bringing that data to someone, you know, like say this is what happened. Like I subbed in on several drop-in groups again this week, you know, and people will say this is what happened, and I'm wondering how to process that, and other people will say in my experience, like, so you can get tangible feedback on, you know, on those situational things, on that data that Debbie was talking about, you know, in our drop-in groups. But to
Mhm.
the next question, um, uh, how do I find betrayed partner supports that can meet me where I'm at on the healing journey? I'm several years in and have decided to stay with my partner and try to rebuild. Many of the support groups are for a person in immediate crisis post discovery, or those who have decided to leave, or those are stuck or in limbo or anger or resentment. It's helpful to offer support to those in pain, but I find it difficult to find support at the partner level with those who where I'm at. So I'm going to hit click. I'm going to click, but you know, the drop-in groups, I mean, there are people in all stages, and you know, I've been pretty candid. I'm a member of 12-step groups, and there's people in all stages, and you know, I can learn from all of that. I can share, you know, with all of that. But looking for a group where, you know, you know, it's just you and you're all in the exact same spot in the road is going to be difficult. One more thing that, and Debbie and I were talking about it at the beginning, but that empowered women, I'll pull the link for that too, but we have an empowered women's retreat next week, and I'll tell you what, you know, the group that you form, you know, like they are still connected after we had a retreat in January, and they are still connected. So that is a group of people that are all in a spot on the journey. And that doesn't mean they're all in the same spot. Like some of them are staying, some of them are leaving, whatever, but they're on this healing journey and they're doing it as a group. And it was amazingly powerful. So I'm going to pull the link. And Debbie, other thoughts on this particular aspect?
Well, I do know it's hard, and I have felt that there is kind of there's kind of a bit of a gap there, like you said. And so, if you're in Arizona, I'm starting a group around
Mm,
this particular thing, and that is women who have kind of gone through the early parts of betrayal, right? I'm kind of post all of that. I mean, I'm either staying in or I'm leaving, it doesn't matter, but we're going deeper. And it's some of the work is very similar, a little bit to what they're doing in the intensive. So I mean, I love the intensive idea, especially if you're feeling stuck or if you want to go deeper and you've never felt like you've gone deeper and you want to join in with a group that's going to stay with you. Because my observation in talking about the intensive was a lot of these women had been in recovery in their healing journey for a significant amount of time. So they would be in that same boat I'm hearing you say. And so I'm doing the same thing with my women's group and doing 3 different modules. Unfortunately, you have to be in Arizona, and I'm hoping that the day will come where it will be offered, more than that. But my other recommendation is that maybe you look at an aspect of your recovery that you're struggling in
mm,
this moment. Can I find a group that addresses that? You know,
mm.
I might talk to some of the other therapists that help facilitate the retreats, and some of them are doing the artist's way, which is a great way to kind of connect with yourself and your creativity and go deeper. And there's practices and everything else that kind of help you. And so there's groups out there. There's lots of different online groups. So the other thing might be, do I take an aspect of it? Do I join some type of group that's going to help me, maybe um, I'm just trying to think, maybe I do work more on my creativity. I hit creativity a lot with my partners that are healing, and they've been post healing quite a bit, because I do feel that that's very healing, and that as a part of them that kind of gets neglected in the early stages. Um, but just off the top of my head, there is a gap there. I'm not going to lie, of people who have maybe, like you said, been quite a distance down the road, and I'm choosing to stay, but I want to go a little bit deeper in my healing and not just, that I've gone through the immediate crisis. But 12 steps are great. I love sex and healing relationship, the retreats. So I would say go online and see if there's some options online that might fit those needs if you don't have them locally.
And maybe the needs are not even about recovery. Like I love what you're talking about with creativity. Maybe you just go take an art class or do a book club or something that's got nothing to do with all of this stuff and is just something that would be joyful in your life, you know? I mean, like that can be a whole supportive aspect without it being just about, recovery or the addict or whatever too. So yeah, I think look for things, I like even that you're like, if you're stuck on one little area, like, okay, then is there something that would meet that need? I think that's a great way to look at that as well. So, okay. This sounds like being the addict secret keeper, a heavy burden. What would you have the same advice if the relationship was over? I am not exactly sure. Is that about being
I'm going to make an assumption that it's when we were talking about the vault.
okay? Yeah.
So I'm going to go with that assumption. If I'm wrong,
I was
whoever
kind of
gave me
wondering
that
about that too.
question,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, just give us a little more data. That would be helpful. I can understand why you would think that, but it's a fine line. I think I'd mentioned that. No, I don't want you to be the secret keeper. Like I said, addiction, thrives in, secrecy. It's that we choose carefully who we share things with. Full disclosure, again, when I was going through my early days of betrayal, I did want to talk about it to a lot of people, but I soon discovered that that wasn't the healthiest thing to do. And I've mentioned time and time again that I ended up finding, for me, it was like a handful, 5, 6 people that became my healing circle. And so those are the ones that knew the details that I could trust. Um, and my situation was such that I could share with those 6 people. I found that these people were non-judgmental. Though these people had skill sets that I needed, whether it was they were logical and could help me when I was emotional, or I felt so comfortable with them, I could ugly cry, or the one that would give me hope that I wouldn't always feel the way I did. I had my therapist that I was sharing everything with. And so I had all those people that I was sharing my story and the things that I was experiencing with. I think we have to be careful when, especially if we're going to work on a relationship and we're planning on moving forward and staying together, that we have to be careful who we share some of the details of maybe the addiction or our frustrations, because some people aren't good at keeping secrets. So that's why I like the idea of we have a discussion, we communicate, we talk about who we're sharing with. I really struggle with the clients that come in and they go, no, we decide we're not telling anybody. Well, that's not how we recover in addiction. Isolation is not how we heal. So we have to challenge you, and I'm going to challenge them to, we've got to come up with two people that you're going to share it with. You go back to your addict partner and you let them know, I'm choosing this person and this person because I need support. So I'm going to tell them my story. Now, my story to me is a little different than I'm going to talk to them about everything you've done wrong and every detail and aspect of your addiction. I think that we can talk about it and still not make it all just about the addict, but more about here's my internal experience, here's what I'm struggling with. It's interesting. I've had some that I've challenged and they've identified people they're going to share it with, and their addict partner is okay. You know what? I think that's good. You share it with them. And then they go and share it with the person, and the person goes, I've dealt with the same thing.
Mhm.
Right. And all of a sudden they've got this instant connection that they will always have that person for support. I have had other people, I'm not going to lie, who have shared their situation, their story with others, and that person has pulled away. So we have to be so careful who is worthy of our vulnerability. Can I really trust that person? And again, it kind of goes back to, I would look at the braving acronym for people. That's who I know who to trust. And then my gut tells me it's okay for me to share this with this person. So you're right. We don't want to be kind of the secret keeper at all. We just want to make sure that it's safe, that who we share with is safe, and that we're doing it in the healthiest way possible.
Yeah, yeah, and I've like you're saying, the pulling away, or I've had it where partners are sharing something and then it gets turned around on them, but something they did or didn't do, they weren't whatever, and so instead of getting support, it's like they're almost vilified. So that doesn't help, and I think it's also really important, is what I'm going to share going to be traumatizing to someone else? Am I going to be causing someone else pain? I'm not talking about the addict, but like the person like parents, or children, am I going to be causing someone else, trauma? Is this the proper thing to do? And even, to your point about if you're going to stay together, is this something that, around Thanksgiving table that you want everybody, sitting there thinking about and talking about, so
Mhm.
it's very difficult. It's not about keeping secrets, it's about the safety. But this person did say yes to the vault. So,
Yeah,
okay.
and if you're unsure, take it to your therapist, right? Talk with your through with your therapist so you can do it in the healthiest way possible would be my other just PS.
My SAPA partner has shown me for several years that he is only interested in faking recovery, despite his repeatedly saying words. He wants actual recovery. In going by his actions rather than his words, I'm trying to truly accept that he's not ready and may never be. I understand cognitively, but I'm stuck mentally. I don't even know why. He's mean and respectful, lies and blames. I go to the betrayed partner groups regularly, and I have great connections that I've made through there. My SA and I are separated, but under the same roof, due mostly to finances. I'm trying to do things I need to do for me, but I'm constantly triggered and stuck in anger. I feel like existence is intolerable. What do I do when I'm already doing what I can, but I'm stuck?
Oh, that is a hard situation you're in. Gosh, I have, my heart really hurts for your situation. That would be so difficult and so many challenges. Um, the number one thing I just want to ask, because I say this to every one of my clients when they're struggling, how's your self-care? Are you doing a lot of self-care? Are you taking time away? Are you stepping out of the situation that you're in so you have breaks? What do I mean about with that, I mean, do you get out of the house at times, and are you around people that are uplifting? Are you in groups where you've got support? And so maybe in the group, they can have empathy for you, and they can possibly give you ideas that you may not have. Because, in your situation, oftentimes it's kind of like we can't come up with ideas because we're so in it. And sometimes other people have an outside perspective. So that would be another thing. I would also look at, okay, what are the boundaries you have in place? Because anytime there's resentment or anger, that's an indicator to me that your boundaries are being violated, and you're not, somehow following through. Maybe we need to redo the boundary some, or maybe you don't have a boundary in place. So that would be another thing that I would look at is the boundaries, and how do I go about creating a healthy boundary? And again, how much interaction do you have to do if you're in your separation? And I don't know, it sounds to me like it's not like a therapeutic type separation. Is it a separation leading towards divorce? That's very different. But have clear boundaries around what I will or will not talk with you, how much, when I'm going to share your space. So go through and look at all your physical boundaries, right? Which includes your space, your property. Look at your emotional boundaries, which would include conversations I'm not willing to have or talk to you about, how we're going to communicate. Communication boundaries is very, very important. What we will communicate, how we will communicate. So you might just need to have the help of somebody who really gets boundaries and understands boundaries. So you can kind of go through, maybe just review your boundaries. And then you may have to verbalize or send an email with the boundaries that you have in place. I'm not sure how you're communicating. My clients typically, oftentimes they resort to, emailing or texting, which is not my favorite, but depending on the circumstances, it may be the safest. And so what can you do to create safety for you would be my focus. So is it self-care? Is it I get into a therapist who can help guide me and direct me, right? So when things don't go well, I go back in and we problem solve again and figure it out. Do I get a group of people that are there to support me along the way? Because it's hard. And can I step away at times? Can I literally physically get out of the environment and have a break? I've had clients do that. Can you go to a friend's house for 24, 48 hours and just have some downtime so that you continue going? But the more support you have, I think the more bearable it's going to be. And gosh, I just feel badly that you're going through such a difficult situation.
Yeah, and I want to give you hope, because I know lots of people who stay in the relationship, sometimes for finances, sometimes, I mean, for lots of reasons, and
Mhm.
that's all, but they find their joy. Like they get their healthy boundaries in place, and then what that person is doing or not doing, doesn't have to rock the boat every single time. Finding the joy. Going having coffee with a girlfriend who has nothing to do with any of this stuff, or
Mm.
I mean, yeah, doing something of service work, whether it's pets or whatever it is, but
Mhm.
being very intentional about doing good self-care things, good things that fill my tank up, and take me away from the situation, that's in the household. But yeah, thanks for being here and sharing that. I'm
Yes,
I'm sorry for the pain, but lean into all the resources that we have that can help support you too.
yeah.
Okay, so I will see you in person
Yes.
next week, and then Matt will be on next week uh, on this webinar. There will be a time change on this one because of the Arizona. Arizona does not do daylight savings time, so watch the card. So when after daylight savings time goes into place, the card will change. It'll be 2:30 Pacific time instead of 1:30. So check that out. But we'll have that posted in advance. So okay, thanks everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.